I don't know. Thank you. Right.
You ready? Okay, good. Go ahead and get started. Welcome, everyone. I know this talk came about relatively short notice, but it's good to see. Actually, the folks I was hoping would be here are, so that's great. And it gives me a great pleasure to welcome to OHSU someone I've known for a long time, and who also happens to be in town because some of you know Chip Masseri, who's going into this I guess retirement mode, not total retirement, but anyways. So I'd like to introduce Frank Naeymi-Rad, who's the Chief Executive Officer and Chairman of the Board and co-founder of a company called Intelligent Medical Objects, which is based in the Chicago area. Some of you may have heard of them. They actually employ one of our graduates and also one of our longtime students who has been in the lifetime student category, but she does great work for them. And actually, this isn't the first company that Frank founded. He founded another company called Intelligent Medical Systems, which was sold to Glaxo in 1994. He's a member of numerous organizations in the field, author and co-author of several publications. His degrees are from Southern Illinois University and Illinois Institute of Technology, the latter being a PhD in computer science, and he did his thesis work focused on medical vocabulary to support database translation, information retrieval, intelligent medical records, and expert systems. And Frank has a very interesting vision for bringing semantics to medical data. And I always enjoy hearing him talk, so I'll enjoy hearing the latest incarnation. So I will turn it over to him. I guess one last thing before we start, I would point out, given the late nature, we may not have any people out there, but we are streaming this as we stream all of our videos. And we actually take questions by Twitter, so I'll monitor the Twitter feed, and we may get a question from out there. But if not, I'm sure there'll be plenty of questions here, although I'm informed that we need to wrap up by about 10:45 because we were able to squeeze into this classroom today. So,
Thank you very much. I also have Regis Charlot, our president, our CTO. I asked Regis to join me and be available during the Q&A, and so Regis will be available, especially if some technical questions come. Well, thank you very much, and hope this can make a interesting experience. I'm going to be really focusing on next generations of innovation on the HIT and the concept called semantic highway that I hope I can get through. And I think at the same time, really go over some of the challenging and opportunities for new ventures, basically virtual commerce. I feel like to really make something come alive, you really need to have some attached dollar amount to it so that people can make money on it. If people can make money, I think this is going to be great. This would be given by basically myself and Regis Charlot. So I think, what's important is first to kind of give you a little more background about ourselves. But before I say that, I want to kind of take you back about 2,500 years ago. Okay. The first so-called multi-nation country was done by a person called Cyrus, who invaded and freed the Jews, sent the Jews to build a temple, as well as he created this really a completely exciting empire which allowed people to do trade. If you look at the Persepolis and you see the statues that were developed there, they're actually taking gifts. They're not really gifts, they're just commerce. They're doing commerce. And one of the things he did, he created these outposts. And these outposts were really created to allow a trusted model. So one outpost could talk to another outpost, and he sent 2 messengers every day. They go from one location to another location. So he didn't just create these infrastructure of commerce without balancing check and trust. So he knew what was going on. So I believe that's exactly what needs to happen to HIT. We need to know what's going on, and we need to understand what's being collected. This guessing game has to go away. And if we can successfully achieve that, we will be able to then basically overcome the challenge. Well, let me tell you a little about our company. So obviously, really, the most important part is that really we have been the innovation in clinical interface terminology, meaning, instead of calling the synonyms, we just actually take every synonym, every term has a unique identifier, and it lives within its own universe. And we started releasing our products in 1995, a year after our company was incorporated. And immediately, those same identifiers from 1995, the same identifier given to each of the terms, each of the descriptions. Really, we are core team been together since then. I think, if you really look at it, even some of our partners are coming back. Dr. Andy Cantor, who is really, some of you probably know, very active in Millennium Village. He worked in Columbia as well. He left IMO, and he's just back again to help us. Again, it's really almost like a family, and Chip Nasseri is a good example. And we hope that we can extend the family. It's not because it's a big responsibility, and we need qualified people to be there. We have significant footprint. Obviously, most of the electronic medical records are trusting us in our terminology, but majority of them historically been looking at us as a billing and reimbursement mapping. We have over 350,000 physician users, and in estimated close to right now about 3,800 hospitals in the country using one or the other our services. We price our product very low, so and that's really our objective, is to really help the transformations activities. We are really moving to international very heavily, but our primary objective for international is to increase the reach and capability of our electronic medical record partner like Epic, Cerner, Meditech, Allscript. As they go into those countries, we try to be in that country to support them. There's not that much opportunity there, but there will be opportunity in the future, because the commerce that we believe is going to happen later on is going to happen through Epic. It's going to happen through Meditech. It's going to happen through Cerner. And that's what I feel that what our responsibility is, to make sure that as they go to other countries, we can also support it. And obviously, it's very important for you to note, there's not any HIT company that I know of that half of the board of directors are MDs. And half of the board of directors are not just regular MDs, these are really innovative MDs. Dr. Andy Cantor is a board director, he's active informaticist. Dr. Charlie Saffron is on our board director, was chairman of AMIA. And then Dr. David Trace, who was really my partner in my first company that we sold. He was the dean of medical school, as well as worked a lot of stuff in severity assessment modeling. And Dr. Kim Meyer, who has come up and had this patent on this concept called problem-solving engine. He believes you go to a doctor to solve your problem. So he said, we need to understand how the problem is solved, and then be able to encapsulate that. So again, this is very important for you to understand. That structure allows me to stay focused in our mission to help the clinicians and activity there. Our mission and visions are on our website, and you can clearly see and feel what we are about. We're really looking for informaticists that can come to our company. We doubled in size in employee. We have over 160 employees right now. Just last year alone, we hired 60 informaticists. Majority of them were MDs and informatics people. And we expect to hire 50 more this year. Again, this is because of the magnitude of responsibility that we have in the marketplace. We are expert, and we want to support innovation and help commercialization of informatics innovations. So, all right, what we're going to talk about today. Obviously, we're going to go very quickly on definitions of role of medical terminology, how we see it, role of adoptions of interface terminology, and how it really increased. I would just kind of focus on how did we go from going from just vendor by vendor or client by client into really massively increasing our footprint, and that whole aspects of how that happened and why. I can tell you what the success story was. And again, the whole objective here is just-in-time terminology. Things change, can we respond to that and bring it into the forefront? And then really whole semantic highway, and why I believe this is really innovation foundations, and the need for what I call semantic grid. And that's why I'm here. I believe the academic centers really need to be leading those trading outposts that I was talking to you. It has to really have the factories in academic centers. So one thing discoveries happen in academic centers, then you should be able to be packaged up and go into trading outposts like Epic and be able to realize for that academic center, for that innovator, so they can actually monetize that. So again, we believe the foundation of EHR is the terminology. and terminology which was based on a concept-based architecture. And as you can see, the way we identify is that the fact that you say MI, heart attack, myocardial infarctions, they really have same meaning, so they have to really go to the same concept. And so when people start building their own synonym, and if those synonyms are not really mapped to those concepts, I'm sorry, we just lost that very important point of reference. And we feel that those points of reference has to be maintained. We have to actually have some argument around this, some aspects of, well, is the breast cancer and cancer of breast the same? We say, you know what? You could say the same, but when I talk to my wife, who's a gynecologist, she said, well, Frank, when I say breast cancer, I'm really not breast cancer. When I in my notes say cancer of breast, it's actually I'm managing that patient with the cancer. So again, what that means is that we cannot take that lexical variance lightly. We need to respect that. Now, we may not put it in our search engine to show both of them, but in whichever case, we want to make sure that that term, that concept is maintained. So when you later on do discovery on the longitudinal aspects of the care, you can then understand what that physician was thinking. And you can probably learn not only from that physician, from that patient, but from concept as well together. I believe it's really exciting phenomenon happening. Again, you are all very familiar with all the different coding systems. Because of our international involvement, we are actively involved. I see 10 WHO, I see 10 CA, I see 10 Australia. It is amazing. It is amazing as we go to these countries how they are looking at us. They're looking at the United States and asking, guys, where are you going? We want to be there. We want to follow you, except Germany. That's the only but Germany kind of has its own philosophy, which is really interesting. We're trying to get into that. That's because, but other than that, everybody else are really looking up to what's happening in the U.S. and they want to follow. And I think I would say this is a very, very, very exciting time for informatics. Our primary objective for IMO is right now to capture and preserve the clinical intent. That's the most important things. And as soon as you go and parse the data and identify some tokenizations or identify some concept, capture that and preserve it in a full version and identifications that has mapped at that point in time. Again, the fact that pharmacy, you have this CROs and EHRs and pharmacies have 3 different coding systems for the same thing. One is looking at it through NDC, one is looking at it through Medra, one is looking at it through, RX norm. Again, these are all aspects that has to be normalized. And I think what National Library of Medicine has done, which is truly innovative, I think Betsy Humphrey by far has been one of the most innovative persons in the country, I believe, by bringing about the National Library of Medicine, identifying the standards and then making sure people understand and get access to the standards. We do not. IMO has no intent to create new standards. Our objective is to make the standards work. And as the standards becomes better, our mapping to them will become better. Again, that is the foundation of our strategy. So what we feel that as these standards for laboratory and medications and administration become more sophisticated, we'll map to them and normalize them. What we want that physician to say what they want to say and not have to be a coder, not become a coder to actually code this stuff. All right? I think there are different type of terminology, and I think the most important is that our primary objective is interface terminology. Okay, now, what is interface terminology? It is a cross-map of the various code set and medical terminology to allow the capture of structured clinical information from the provider. Again, there's a lot of innovation around terminology is still happening, and we hope that we can, by mapping to that, bring those innovations also to the point of service. Again, it's all about connecting to that concept, connecting to that groupers, connecting to those value sets, and then actually making it workable at point of service and at point and analytics. Well, ICD-10 turned everybody kind of upside down for a while, obviously. So the whole concept of going from 13 or 15,000 IC9 code to 65,000 IC10 CM code is absolutely amazing. And really, being able to create an initial gem map that was distributed, it really did not do a favor. Actually expose things that actually in many cases was result in this delay again, because people cannot be ready. It's rather difficult. Many of our clients are going to be ready for October 1, and we have asked them to stay on and then continue using it because they're going to be much stronger as the true IC10 and meaningful use stage 3 comes to the fruition. Again, I think everything that we have is mapped. Our problem terminology is probably our most, almost 100% of our sites use our problem terminology. So it's one of the most important aspects of our contribution to the marketplace. We identify for every term, there may be a one to many, in some cases many to many, but there's always a preferred map. So when you guys are going to get the activity and do research on our terminology here, you need to understand is that we always may create one preferred map. And that preferred map is, there may be, in some cases, a term in a problem list may have multiple IC9 code, depending on what the description is. But the most important part is we're trying to capture how the clinicians wants to talk about their patients and then encapsulate that. And for that, we identify preferred map. If that map is not really, there's not a coding system exists, we also have our own concept layer to maintain that, to try to manage and group it internally for management. We map everything to UMLS and mesh. We try to really create that universe that is connected to our standards of our country and making sure that those standards are respected and any additional investment that we do at the central locations can be brought up through our services to our client base. We make sure that we bring the standard organizations to help us. AHIMA, which is Coding Standards Group, we support them, and they review every single map that we have for IC9 and CPT activities. We want to make sure that we do not, in any way or any shape, do things in vacuum. So at least we have some sort of cross-map process in place. And we believe, as we get connected to academic center, we also have some additional stuff. As we go into clinical concepts, that complexity, I think, is going to be challenged again, and we hope that we can serve you guys as well as we're doing serve our end users. We do have a different definition, descriptions for clinicians' viewpoint. We have clinician-friendly, we have a patient-friendly, and we have a coder-friendly. So we try to classify that term in what context it was. So if people want to filter those, they can filter it. We also have a specialty concept. So by specialty, if you want to filter by specialty, but a lot of this stuff hasn't been really utilized as well. So you could technically say, if I'm cardiologist, well, let me filter my problem list only by the cardiology problems, concepts. Right there, boom. Now I can see all the cardiology concept or terms in the problem list. There's multiple ways of looking at it. So what we try to do, we try to create the foundations so people can do those kind of innovations at the point of service and care. Obviously, very familiar with these coding sets. I think it is interesting that PCS and CVX and these other coding aspects have really created some challenges for us because many of them have been really developed in different settings, and you have AMA, CPT, and all the PCS connections. It hasn't been a simple experiment. But what became most exciting is that we decided to just go from orders and just diagnoses to just go to comprehensive terminology service. By making that move, it was a major move in our company. That's basically why our number of staff doubled, and through that process, we actually moved into this situation where we have over, and right now close to 500,000 concepts and over 2 million interface terms. These are what we manage, distribute. And the way that happened is that we got one of our clients had all their hospital and all their clients send all their dictionaries to us. And we then normalized all that. And then we created this universe of terminology management to allow that normalizations happen, and then they pushed it back to the clients and let them do the reconciliations and management of that. It's an unbelievable, exciting opportunity because we're getting each users in the front line involved, and they're becoming far more active in not only reviewing our stuff, but also participating. In IC10 area, we actually realized things were a little bit more difficult. We started creating these terminologies to support additional so-called calculators type of thing. So we developed these calculators, and as we developed these calculators, it became very clear that you develop these calculators, and if associated with each term that is entered, you bring different IC10 descriptions or IC10 codes, but at the same time, there are for every one of those, we have to map it to SNOMED, we have to map it to IC9, we have to... Oh my God, guys, I mean, it's crazy. About 4 months ago, one of our releases had over 1.1 million mapping changes because of all the activities associated with these cross-mapping. So you can tell it's a very complex challenge that we had to solve. But what really it did, it really kind of turned everybody, kind of into understanding the challenge and bringing about a concept of documenting and feeling what that documentation is. When you get to the documentation, there's a calculator, there's a context of the calculator, and there is the application that is running, the calculator application. So what we're trying to tell our clients is, listen, don't let the application limit you. Understand the terminology. See what we're delivering to you, and then you build your innovation on top of it. Don't let the application kind of handicap you. And I think that's one of the things that is very, very important. Each EHR have their own limitations. They have their own policies and procedures. So we try to educate everybody so at least they can challenge their EHRs. So if you have the knowledge, let us access it. Let us deliver it. So really, everyone was looking at the coding. 90% of the time, at the end of IC10, was coding. I'll tell you, this delay in IC10 by year is the best thing that happened to the clinical aspects of care. You know why? Because we are not focused on that dollar anymore. We have a 1 year. During this 1 year, we also have a meaningful use 2 and 3 that we're working on. So we're going to start thinking about what is really happening. So doctors enter the term. Where is it going? Is it for the first time? We're actually thinking that because there's no way the coders can find all the codes. We bring in the coding process as close as possible to clinical interface at the point of care. That process is beautiful opportunity for informatics. It's the first time ever, this year, is the first time ever that informatics is going to be really, truly understood. To this day, I don't think anybody understood what it means informatics, what it means to be a clinician and know computer science, what it means to understand that is data and outcome versus just the billing. So now what happens, you get the code, this is what everybody think about, we capture the document, clinical content, and then voila, you get the money. That's all they cared about before. But guys, what's really happening, we also map into clinical concept. We have in the SNOMED infrastructure. When you really start looking at it, as the SNOMED infrastructure becomes more and more sophisticated, imagine analytics that you can do with the data that is codified correctly, at least consistently. And that's really exciting part of the opportunity. I think as more and more these services are understood, as the data is correctly captured at point of care and then codified, then the researchers in the back can actually really do some magic, which I hope that we can make that happen for you guys. So what the difference between us, there's another aspect people don't realize. Just going to a SNOMED is not solving the problem. The problem is in context. How the terminology is used in context of point of care and documentation. You have to understand the patient's workflow. You have to understand if it's in diagnostics phase, are we in a management phase, are we in, what phases are we? Are we in HPI, are we in a review of system, are we in assessment plan, are we a follow-up? Every one of these, every snippet that gets out of the dictations from physicians has attribute attached to it. Those attributes have to be identified in context. So as you retrieve the information, you can retrieve it better. I believe is that what we have in IMO, because we understand electronic medical record, we, in addition that we have created this comprehensive infrastructure for terminology that is mapped to IC9, IC10, SNOMED-CT, we also have created all the filtering, additional filtering, grouping, that where they can be used in the context of documentation. Is a chief complaint, as part of HPI, is a past medical history, is a surgical history. How that concept is, how that term and the corresponding concept is related to that documentation is as important. And that is, I believe, is another area of innovation. So I think understanding foundation of EHR means that, so how do you then take that data and now bring this something more complex and exciting into the picture? Well, I think providing, initially everybody wants to, well, I want to really just find my terminology. Tell me, our clinician cannot find it. Let me find a diagnosis. That's how we solved the first pass. We lost time spending, searching for terms. Well, we helped them to solve that. Okay. We lost revenue in organizations. Well, we're providing them coding to making it easier for them to do revenue. And again, what is that one? See one, do one, teach one. And this is what me and Bill have been talking about. How can we really bring that to education? How do we know what students saw in their clinical rotations? Can we add additional spark to that? Did he see one, or did he see one and do one, or did he see one and then was participating in teaching one? Again, all that concept, becomes a very exciting opportunity. And I think that's, to me, is what turns me on, obviously, because I worked at medical school for so long, because I want to really empower the clinicians and at that point in time and give them more objectives. So this was a meaningful use, which really kind of catapulted our services in the front line. People realized they had to get there was some money there, they could collect those money, and as we went to meaningful use stage 1, it was easy for people to do that. When they get stage 2, they realized it's very difficult. I'm telling you, 3 is going to be even more difficult. Well, there were some changes. Obviously, suddenly they changed to 2014 for the meaningful. Then there was this other one came up, IC10, CM, and PCS. Don't underestimate PCS. It's hell, okay? I mean, a lot of people don't realize. They haven't dig deep enough to realize how hard this stuff is. So I think, but anyway, I think we're responding to those. And then I think ball was dropped, obviously. We'll probably come back again. And we'll don't know where it's going to come back, or is meaningful use stage 3 is going to be going backwards or forward or whatever is going to happen. But one thing is for sure, it is the opportunity. This is it. This is the opportunity to really do that transformation that are required. So, what are we doing? We view the MU1 as really everybody looked at as searchable. They were looking at what IMO was doing and what everybody was doing searchable. Oh, I want a billing code. Oh, thank God. I want my clinician to use my computer. Give me billing code. So we call it searchable acting. Okay. Well, what we believe that MU2 is now become actionable. Meaning it's no longer just searching for code and plugging it in. You're going to take some actions. You're going to have to follow some reports, some quality measures, grouping, and so on and so forth. And again, associated with that grouping, you're going to be measured, so therefore you're going to take actions and some workflow activities. Okay? Again, that's going to expand informatics humongously this year. I mean, if you thought, informatics was growing, now it's going to grow much, much faster. And obviously, analyzable, which is really what I would call the nirvana and the ultimate area. The whole area of analyzable is going to really make the informatics to become the most important field in the healthcare as well as in the country around the big data and analytics and how that's done. So I think it is an innovation opportunity at each of the steps. But we need to prepare for it. We need to really be ready for it and really not only build education, but build a tools service. What we did, we were distributing our stuff in mostly as just a data set before about 2009. And then in 2009, we started doing some technology. We said, okay, how can we now bring some innovation in technology and combine that with informatics? And that is what I want to share with you, why I believe that this is a potential new commerce and could be new commerce. So this is how we looked when we actually were before 1994, before 2004. Now remember, we were in business for 10 years. I actually have a wine bottle that says 10 years anniversary. We're still with 20 people. We're still running around, and a lot of informatics, a lot of work we did. We built a disease management system. We already sold the EMR to Glaxo. We had all this stuff, but still, things were not moving. So we were very fortunate that we had an innovative company and understanding the need associated with the market, which is Epic, decided to take Cornell University work that we were doing with Cornell and implement an Epic. Well, when we did that, we very nicely grew. The growth was recognized, almost doubling every year type of thing in our activity, or some percentage growth. We had the only thing was that the linear growth. Everybody loves the linear growth, but what's happening is that it was slow implementations because you give them the data, they have to go to their product and importing, exporting. Revenue recognitions was not as fast, because think about it. If the clients only get the regulatory updates or get the 1 or 2 updates a year, some changes that happen in the middle, of the transitions, discoveries are not recognized. And obviously, installations and updates were slow. So what happened to us, we put that technology, cloud-based technology, and we started distributing cloud-based technology. And with matter of, this is how we looked at that time, in less than 2 years, we just grew. It was so easy. Majority of the clients just implement, and actually we even grown a lot bigger than this right now. And the reason is not to say it's our growth, is ease of deployment and implementation. So what that really means is that understanding allows now us to bring other innovations and disseminate it through the same install base. And these install base is not just Epic, it's not just Cerner, it's not just Meditech, it's multiple ones. They're all using the same foundations. Again, fast growth, fast implementation, fast revenue impact for our clients. Clients can see immediately what's going on, what's happening to bring it to bear. And obviously, real-time update, what I would call just-in-time terminology update. Now, we are working right now with OHSU, and as one of our first projects is we're going to try to give you access to our appliance. This is actual appliance, what we call all of our terminology is built in there and is updated regularly and maintains log and activities, and is really it can be run on the cloud and run at the host at a local level. Well, with the local server, would then connects to the cloud version, so if the local version breaks, any researchers works out can fail over to the cloud version. So we're going to start with the cloud version, and the way it's structured right now, it's really with just with these are all appliance sites in less than a year. That's how many appliance sites we implemented. This is on top of what I showed you before, and these are at locations in the client. And then we have these, what we call services around the country that fail over. I normally don't talk about this in academic talk, because our objective is to make sure you understand that when the appliance that you're getting in what kind of network you're plugging yourself into. You're plugging yourself into the network of all the clinic, all the other sites. And we are collecting all the terms that are searched, what's going on. In many cases, we can actually identify outbreaks, a couple of weeks, before others, because we can see how the physician are entering it. And obviously, we filter in between academic searches as well as the physician point-of-care searches. These are all anonymized. Again, it's another opportunity for research. We were talking an hour ago what kind of other work we can do. This is another area that you guys can tap into and look at what searches people are doing and how you want to utilize that within your structure or some of the work that you're doing with your community here. Now, so Semantic Highway really basically is the real-time pathway to messaging based on medical concept. So that's what I view it. So imagine it is that being able to, as documents go through, to know what they're talking about and how they're doing, and based on that, what they're talking about, to be able to have things triggered. That, to me, is what I'm defining as Semantic Highway. So, again, we increase domain coverage, and what we learned is that, as we go into the next level, is that there's an opportunity to engage everybody else around us. So what we had to do to manage that, there's not enough informaticists in the country to be able to help us, okay? So we have to engage our client themselves to actually help us to manage their own terminology. So we created this very elaborate migration services, which is the clients send us the documents, we push the documents through our service automatic matching, and then we have this workflow that they go through. As they go through that workflow, it's a multiple step, multiple processes. Then within the process is done, we basically bring it back, and then we have created another cloud-based service for them to connect and reconcile their dictionaries. During that process, they can challenge what our mapping was, what their system was, and also they can now actually say, oh, give me my dashboard of all my dictionaries, and how do I relate to other dictionaries? Again, another area that we can have you guys work with us is the whole concept here is that understanding the dictionaries that are using that site gives the DNA of that site. Okay? That DNA will tell you what they can and cannot do, or what they can report on, what they cannot report on. And now you can then create a mapping and so-called matching between site to site to see what everybody do together. Again, we're very excited about this, but it's growing so fast that we have to, we're trying to really now get some massive Oracle appliances to try to help us. We try to use everything. So most important part is when we get in new terms that someone says we really want to map it, we get that term, and within 6 weeks, we try to get that term into the corpus. Obviously, every term that we map doesn't find its way in the corpus. We have for the 2 million terms that we have maybe about 5 million descriptions that, a lot of them don't find their into the front line. But they're sitting in our corpus for evaluation. So as soon as we map the term to something, we keep track of that. Now, to get to that is not available on Appliance, but to get to that, if you get some research here, we can connect you to those data as well. So you can see. The NLP, natural language processing, or our concept tagger actually does that, get access to it for you. So again, this is how we bring it up. So let's talk about innovation. This is a dictation, a simple dictation about a 50-year-old patient, and it was basically a one paragraph, a couple paragraph descriptions about a patient's visiting, and so we use this as part of our, when we open our office in Champaign, we brought non-computer science, non-medical people and interested in informatics together to put together this, what we call innovation challenge. And we had a challenge and almost a hackathon type of thing. Actually, we have another hackathon coming next week, which we have 700 students from all different schools coming to Champaign, and we actually give another challenge to them for that hackathon. But this one was around this case. And we said, okay, students, tell us what you're learning about this. How can you understand? What's going on with this patient? And basically what it came down to is that they worked out, and everyone tried to come up with what we learned is that there's these concepts that were existed in that case, and you can get the XML of it, and then what we then created structural longitudinal aspects. So within that one paragraph, there were discussions on 5 different or 6 different episodes of the patient care. So the question was, they suddenly realized it was much more complex situation. That complexity taught them, oh my God, what an opportunity to work in informatics. By the way, out of those group of students who competed, almost 80% of them work for me right now. Okay? So that excitement of knowing, wow, there's so much more to do. Every one of these arrow that you say there is still another new innovation. Nobody has done it yet. It's still this potential discovery. Being able to understand and then bring that result back either prospectively or retrospectively to the patient care. There was multiple episodes associated with it. For purpose of time, I'm not going to go into too much detail on this. I think that we can, as part of follow-up, I think, we have this NLP infrastructures where you can test a different kind of NLP using our terminology. We can, set up another session just going to this kind of detail. But what is important is that we took the text and information model, and that information model identified items within the face sheet and how the face sheet transformation was happening. How a problem came into the face sheet, it was as part of differential diagnoses, how it was ruled in or ruled out, and how that followed up happened, and how it was cared for, how it became the focus of the management. Again, then justified a particular procedure should be done or not, based on the patient history. Okay? Again, these are part of the thing that people don't realize. When you have a clinician involved, and the clinician reads the chart and analyzes the chart and gives you a paragraph summary, that's the gold mine. That's the gold. That's what you want to grab onto. That's what we need informatics to be able to understand and connect to that and bring it on chart and parse it out and then really create that analysis or tagging of that data in a way that it becomes there forever. More important than many other data points that you have in the chart. Again, so what that says to you, it doesn't mean you have to have a very fancy EHR to be able to support some informatics innovations. You just need to understand who the audience is, where is it being performed, and what is it for. And that contextual aspect is becoming more and more important in the care of the patients and how the technology is used. Again, this is the next generation innovation. Concept discovery, basically tagging, and natural language processing. I tell you guys, I am so disappointed with what I have seen in the market in natural language processing. So disappointed. All they do, find E&M codes or get you to IC9 code or IC10 codes for reimbursement. Guys, I mean, that's not, I mean, we really need to do more. We can do a lot more. We can do better. And I think that's, and I think, again, the IC10 delay can give us the opportunity to do that. Do a lot more than just, that's just easy, getting to the coding system. Let's just do it something more exciting. Anyway, so I see applied informatics innovations and adding that to longitudinal care record architecture is by far the next generation. Meaning understand what is captured as you're building your database or data warehouse model, be aware of that stuff, and every year, every 6 months, or every terminology update, reevaluate your data warehouse. Let's face it, guys. Knowledge changes every day. You got to be able to rerun this stuff over and over and over and be able to challenge whatever you had, whatever hypothesis you had. I think it's going to be so exciting. It's going to be nothing but continuous discovery as you build your data warehouse. And I think vendors are doing that right now. We're very excited the work Epic is doing. We're very excited what Meditech's doing and CERN are doing. All the vendors are becoming very, very conscious of that and being able to support their solutions as well as academic solutions and independent solutions. Again, I think the biggest innovation of 21st century will be at the intersection of biology and technology. A new era is beginning. I truly believe that. The experience that Steve Jobs went through on his last year of his life really made him realize how important it was. You know, there was not a voodoo medicine. Medicine is really medicine. You know, it can really do. And I think it's really exciting part for us is to then take that to heart. And I think I have to say, I raised with the Steve lifestyle. You know, I mean, you know, I was in my computer science master program in 1975. You know, during this hype of Apple coming out and everything else coming out and Microsoft. So I've been living in this technology as evolution, but I have always had my eyes in healthcare. I think we are right now in that healthcare where we can have the Steve Jobs of the world of healthcare and informatics come about, and I'm looking forward to support your department to make that happen. Really, I think to connect research and research centers to the point of care, we need to expand the standards like SNOME SCT to classify medical education and research topics around the same concept that are used in the front line. If you have multiple concepts, multiple definitions, in LCME monitors one way, this dictionaries, and each department have their own dictionaries and their own concept domain. Let's bring them together. Let's just kind of connect them somehow, some way. I believe is going to really bring opportunity for us. I think to succeed in semantic-based commerce, we need a semantic grid. We need those trusted outposts. We need those messengers that will go from academic centers to challenge these semantic highway, challenge these companies like IMO, challenge companies like any EHR vendors to say, are you doing it right? What are you missing? What are you not delivering? I think it's not like Facebook. It's not like Twitter. This is not that kind of growth. This requires academic foundations to really challenge the front line. I believe that's very, very important to be able to understand and create that grid that is really truly connects academic centers to the front line. I believe what the work that we're trying to do with your team here is, again, around that whole issue, to make sure you can challenge us and what we are delivering in the front line. Again, we need to empower the clinicians and researchers so their innovation can be marketed and used in real time via semantic grid. So if a discovery happening, ideas come up, you're doing a data warehouse analytics, and you're saying, whoa, there is a relationship between this particular findings or this particular problem and this patient, and this could be generalizable. We did a analysis, ODA analysis, on the HIV population in Africa, and we found out B-complex vitamins was a major factor to keeping these people alive for another 4 or 5 years, because a lot of them were not taking vitamins in some of these regional African nations. When we did the work with the Glaxo Wellcome, when they were working on the cocktail treatment for HIV, we were able to demonstrate that if you administered their medication first in a cocktail treatment, it was a better outcome. Okay? The question here is, these discoveries can almost immediately bring value to the front line. And that's why I hope that we can get to that. Okay. Through a partnership between academic, care delivery, and vendor community, we can make the world flat for HIT, but really I have a heading agenda, and I'm going to be truthful with that. I really would love to make U.S. a destination healthcare for the world. I think we have the best academic centers, best medicine. We just have to make it happen, and we can make it happen. Thank you very much. Question?
Yeah, so we have time for some questions, and as everyone knows, we push these buttons so because we're recording this, and I don't see any questions coming over the Twitter feed. One of the I'm curious on your thoughts on this. I fully buy into your vision of sort of normalizing the semantics of healthcare. One of the problems with data that gets collected in clinical settings is that clinicians are busy. They have other things on their mind. They just want to get through doing their documentation. There's also a lot of complaints, which you may well know, of the data entry, how difficult, maybe not difficult, but time-consuming data entry is in electronic health records. Have you guys given any thought to that problem?
You can press the button. Yeah, that's fine.
Okay.
Press the little...
And then respond to it.
Yeah, okay. So we have analyzed our logs on our portal. It takes about 2.7 seconds for a clinician to find the finding, the right finding. So 2.7 seconds. And when this is not found the first time, it takes 3 searches that occurs in about 7 seconds. Okay, simple.
So I think that's from searchable. Okay, so when you go to actionable, it's a little bit different. So I think I do have a dream. And then the dream that I have is really this whole physician community where they're connected to the academic center through some sort of mechanism where all their activities is harvested in a way that they can then bring those activities and then review it and then basically learn upon that. I think if we got to somehow make it a more proactive model. What that really means is very simply this, is that the logs that we're creating that we just articulated to has an identifier. If we, because we have that feature, if the users identify the providers who was actually using that service and trigger that right at the point of service, that becomes a source of opportunity for them to go back to see what they have done. Majority of docs, I mean, my wife, I'm not kidding you guys, I mean, every time she went to surgery, night before, she had nightmares. And in the middle of nightmares, and I keep telling her, Teresa, what's going on? What's going on? I forgot the suture, whatever this. I'm sure saying some medical stuff I didn't understand, but she was actually that concerned. So it's just that's pre-surgery, and then in post-surgery, same thing. And then I have nightmares. What's going on? I got to go to the hospital. What's going on? I got to go check this thing. So the question here is, they are so conscientious. They're so conscientious. We just need to give them better tools. We need to create these activities that are happening with them within APIC, within the Cerner, within the Meditech, within everything, everywhere they touch. We should be able to bring them together so we can give them some new innovation. I don't know what that looks like. I'm sure somebody else will come up with it, but I will tell you that is what I see the opportunity. And I'll tell you, when the institution, when the application or software application takes that intent and converts it to something else and stores something else, that's by far the biggest violation. Biggest violation to our future. You cannot change that. You got to keep that so we can then give back that physician's opportunity to better themselves, because they always want to better themselves. Did I answer your questions?
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I think I say just take it one step higher. You know, just go to the moon. I mean, there's water on the moon now, so you know we can mine it. Yes, sir.
Alluding to what Bill just mentioned, we're building an ontology in head and neck area in maxillofacial, and as we look to building registries and using our structured data to answer clinical questions, we realize that the information in the health record is fragmented and has a lot of semantic challenges. And as you mentioned in your talk, what's pure gold is the structured information. And if you can, the biggest, we see two big challenges in finding large databases of structured information, and that's getting busy clinicians to enter it in ways that a machine can understand, and then also having it centralized. So if you have collections of data, we still face the challenge that you're only going to get the data from your institution unless you have an institutional review board approval. So for rare entities that I as a clinician may see 5 times every decade, to find the answers to those, we need collections of data that are able to cross institutions, to cross providers, to cross styles of treatment, and to get rid of all the variables around treatment that can affect an outcome and really see what's happening. But
so it's the first thing, I do echo your concern, and that's why the outpost or trusted outpost has to be academic centers. We need to first and foremost create a semantic grid between academic center so they can become who they really should be, polices of these so-called cross-pollinations. As we move this activity to the front line by these vendors who a computer science guy like myself is running the company who doesn't understand medicine, it becomes really obviously I have a little bit more experience because my wife is a doctor, but doesn't necessarily make me a doctor. And you need to be able to have some sort of mechanism where we can bring that activities that are analytics to some sort of validation process within the academic center. The least common denominator is normalization terminology. So you say you do an ontology right now with neck and head. Well, make sure that ontology that you're building has a map, using IMO dictionary as foundations. So now suddenly that ontology, there's multiple aspects to that ontology. There's a descriptions of that ontology, and then there's a relationship among those terms. The relationship among the terms is the gold. The ontology management is going to change. You want to make sure you have a foundation that you can trust on, so when you build something, you can then trust it. Now, when you trust it in that XML format, or that whatever format or portable format that you have, and if that portable format now can then be transmitted to the universe, other academic centers can use it as well and can test it. Or it can be packaged to market it for some so-called risk-based institutions who feel that what you have done is going to help for them managing the risk population and save money. That's what we need. And oh, by the way, you should be rewarded for it. You should be the next Steve Jobs. Or, I'm serious. We should have our academic center be part of that upside. Anyway, that's my spiel on that. Did that answer your question?
yes, it did. And we obviously use SNOMED as the
Perfect.
scaffold for what we did. But we found that in clinical findings, only about 50% of 40% of clinical findings that we've decided are very important for clinicians exist in SNOMED, my domain, and only about 30% of procedures that my fellow domain experts do exist in SNOMED.
Well, I think that's what I think it would be awesome for you to see what we have. What we have done exact opposite. We have first gone to the clinicians and see what they're using, and then model it in the SNOMED. We found the same problem with the SNOMED. So what we feel that there are some, because of some of the post-coordinations associated with some of the hierarchies that exist in SNOMED, that we couldn't rely on it. So we made sure there's a map to the SNOMED hierarchy, but we did not limit the terms because it could not be modeled in the SNOMED. So I think maybe, that could be one project. You guys can look at what we have, see if that model helps you. And there may be things you're doing that I can bring to my clients, right now just in the ontology area. So at least you know that they can use it correctly. Because you are the expert, you know what's going on with your domain. And if I can take your understanding to the rural community in Omaha, it's great. Then that doctor is going to become better. So now that's how I feel. Yes, sir.
A while back, you showed this interesting tree of how you structure data within a clinical narrative. I was wondering, did you do that manually, or did you have your technology generate that structure?
No, this was done manually. It was done mostly manually. But what we used that to show different NLP and what other NLP can do. Some NLP are date sensitive. They can understand the date sensitive. Some can just tag it with just concept based. So what we had to do, the project was really to understand the complexity. After you understood complexity, then say, what kind of innovation can you come up with? Which one of those can you solve with the innovations? Regis, you want to add to that?
Absolutely. The concept of time is very poorly understood. What we're very good at is understanding the way data is built using longitudinal care records, but frankly, fitting that model with an NLP engine is pretty much unheard of, and I've not seen anybody doing that. And we pretty much have access to all NLP engine available in the world, clearly.
I just found it interesting because if you could generate that structure automatically, would we need to compare it across different sites for collaborative purposes? Because then you can see sort of what cognitive model does someone have here versus what cognitive model does someone
even better than that. Even if you can do minor aspects of that, where a physician does a summary, just compare that with the EMR data that you have. That what the EMR says that patient has, just within that organization, that in itself is an unbelievable opportunity to help that EMR to even make their structures better and their data better. Because that's really, it's amazing how some of the historical data gets elevated to importance, which was not supposed to. Something that was resolved, a problem that was resolved that is still dangling in the chart. And talk about credit score. Oh my God! When we turned on our terminology within the consumer terms, our patient portal for our vendor partners, we suddenly realized some of our description that we gave to some of these diagnoses were really not good. So what we tell everybody is that you talk to the patients, you're talking they're really the commander-in-chief of their health, okay? So you want to make sure whatever doctor says should be there and whatever patient you translate should be there at the same time, so allow that patient to make that decisions. And I think I'll tell you, there's just so much more to be done even within the process of physician documentation, EHR storage, and the patient review. If you can get the patient into the equations and then take that chart and then actually make sure they understand it and they know their responsibility, there's just a lot of stuff. You're right. I mean, you can do the cross one, but if you do the cross one, it's just a little bit too far-fetched. You know what I mean? Because we really haven't, we had to crawl before Yeah.
I think the difficulty in that graph and getting people to comprehend just what the hell is happening here was for people to understand from that paragraph, those are actually the events that should be modeled on the graph and what should be shown on a face sheet over time, over 6 events in time. That's what I should see as a provider or as a computer science person, trying to model the data and organize the data using terminology and computer science, simply enough. And that is actually hard enough before we do that automated.
Good. Well, I think we're out of time, so thank you very much.
Thank you.